As I start, I feel like I should say this message is brought to you by Dayquil, Mucinex DM, and Tylenol cold and sinus medicine. But it has hit me this beautiful weather. There is a trade-off, is science. But I have relinquished I have surrendered to my wife and promised her if I don't feel better tomorrow, I will go to the doctor. So I am struggling with this cold and allergy as Abby is too over there, as we all are. But this morning we continue with part 5 of our WEiRD sermon series. WEiRD because normal isn't working. And in the first 4 weeks, if you weren't here, we've established the fact that normal is not working. We discovered that our society and our environment that we live in what it calls normal is leading us to a place in life that we really don't want to be. And if we want stress, if we want anxiety, if we want pain, if we want discontentment, if we want frustration, if we want a meaningless life, then we need to stick with normal. But if we want something different, if we want something different than what normal is offering, then we must get weird. Not weird for weird's sake and just being crazy or different, but in a God-weird kind of way. But sometimes being weird, and most times being weird, is not easy. Sometimes it's a challenge. And today we look at Jesus as He challenges us in our life to be weird. We begin this challenge by Jesus by looking at the 8th chapter of Mark, beginning with the 34th verse. Please join me in your Bibles or up on the screen. Then Jesus called the crowd to Him along with His disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it." Jesus tells us from the get-go that following Him, following His way of life, is going to be weird. It's going to be weird, and it's not going to be easy. We continue. He said, "For what good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit his soul?" Jesus says, what good is it for us to live a normal life but lose our soul? A different way to put it, Jesus says, what our culture says is normal, Jesus challenges us. He says, what if we spend our whole life, what if we spend our whole life living normal like everyone else is living, and then at the very end of our life we realize that we have nothing? And when we hear this seems awfully sad to us in the moment, but when we're in the middle of living a normal life, we don't see it. Let's continue as how He ends this. Verse 37, He says, "Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul?" Here's where Jesus gives us what I believe is the biggest challenge of our existence. The Greek word for exchange really means trade, as I talked with the kids. And to be frank, Jesus just comes out and says, what can you trade for your soul? And Jesus is implying here that there is a trade each and every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 360 days a year, that we are doing something or not doing something. We're making a trade somewhere. In our time, in our energy, in our resources, in an investment in relationship. If we're doing something or not doing something, we're trading it off for something else. And for us to live this God kind of weird way as followers of Jesus, I believe that there are 4 crucial trades that you and I have to make. There are 4 weird trades in our life that we have to make. And the first one, if you want to jot it down, is I believe God challenges us to trade scattered for focused. Again, I believe God's challenging us to trade scattered for focus. Have you noticed that we live in a world that is ridiculously scattered? I mean, we're living in a world that it's possible for us to live scattered all the time. I mean, because of text messages, cell phones, voicemail, internet, Twitter, Facebook, email, you name it. We live in a world where it is now normal to live scattered. And what I mean is, normal life has us living in a way where no one or no one thing has our undivided attention. And I must admit of something, the bride of the church, or the bride of Christ, the church has gotten into this too. I've been to worship services where I'm like a cat chasing a red dot on the floor. Have you ever been to those? Kelly sits with me and I'm like a maniac. I'm like, oh, look at the band, look at the lights, look at the video, look at the band, look at the lights, look at the video. Do I watch the preacher or do I watch the screen? Look at it's scattered. I'm not focused. My ADD kicks in and I have no idea what to listen to, look at, and what's going on because all this stuff is going on. And I strongly believe to live a weird life, God calls us to trade scattered for focus. I think the scattered normalness of our culture, what our culture calls as normal, is producing a level of mediocrity. Mediocrity that is not healthy and not working in our lives. Because if you show me an area of your life where you're scattered, where it doesn't have your undivided attention, I promise you I'll show you in an area in your life where you're mediocre. Mediocre at best. And God is calling us to make this weird trade from scattered to focus. It's like when in the last 7 days have you been in a place where you turn the cell phone off? Or you turn the TV off, or you turn the laptop top off, or where you're completely focused on something. And is it possible to run on a hamster wheel of life so scattered that our spouses and our children and our friends and our loved ones and our family don't ever get the best of us? I mean, it's okay to be busy, but we have to recognize that we are scattered. We're scattered, and a scattered life leads to mediocrity because nothing gets our best, undivided, full attention. And we have to learn this weird discipline of putting our scattered lives aside and leading a more focused life. The second weird trade I believe God is calling us to make is we need to trade instant gratification for peace. Instant gratification in our society today is normal. I mean, we're living in a culture that says, if you want it, you can have it all. If you want it, go get it. If you can't afford it, borrow it. There's even a credit card commercial that says, I want it all. I want it now. You know, my singing's horrible. Y'all know, you've heard that commercial? If not, next time it comes on, you'll remember. I want it all. I want it now. We're living in a culture where instant gratification is normal. And some have realized that you can have the best. Some have realized you can have the shiniest, the newest, the latest, and the best. And at the end of the day, you're no more happier than you were when you began. We have learned that we can have it all, but it hasn't brought us any more happiness or joy or peace in our life. There was King Solomon in the Old Testament. And King Solomon was the richest man in the world up until that moment in history. He had it all. And if you'll turn with me to the second chapter, Ecclesiastes, beginning in the first verse, he said, this is King Solomon. He said, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasures to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. It proved to be meaningless. And listen to what he says in verse 4 through 9. He said, look, I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself. And I planted huge vineyards. I made gardens and parks. And I planted all kinds of fruits and trees. I then made reservoirs for water groves and flourishing trees. I bought male and female servants, which means he had a lot of employees at the time. And I had other slaves that were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed great amounts of silver and gold for myself. I acquired male and female singers. If you've got a band, if you own a whole band or a choir to follow you around all the time, you are rich. And then listen what he says. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. King Solomon says, I had it all. No one on this earth had more than I. And then in verse 11 he said, but then when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled and achieved, everything was meaningless. Everything was meaningless. It was like chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Solomon said, I tested myself on the inside to see what would bring me happiness, and I pursued it all. And I had it all. I got it all. I became the richest man on the earth. No one had more than I did. I was the envy of everyone on this planet. And you know what? Do you know what? I still didn't have peace in my heart. Solomon says, I didn't have peace in my heart. We hear that, and yet how many of us have given into this normal lifestyle of instant gratification and ended up with no joy or no peace or no happiness in this life? We must be willing to trade instant gratification for peace. The third trade God is making us, challenging us to trade, which I believe may be one of the hardest, is I believe God is challenging us to trade shame for freedom. I believe God is challenging us, some of us, to trade shame for freedom. As I meet people, as I go through my day and I live a scattered life and text people back and forth or email people back and forth or meet with them or talk with them or as I go about my week, I am blown away. I am seriously blown away by the guilt and the shame and the pain and the bitterness and the insecurities that so many of us carry around all the time on the inside. I think there's many of us carrying around on the inside pain and from regrets, from past hurts. And I believe there's so many of us carrying around pain and heartache and regrets from failed relationships and bad decisions and mistakes that we can't seem to let go of. And God would say to us, to us today that He doesn't want us to carry it around for a minute longer. He says, don't carry it any further. And some of us are carrying it around and it's affecting our relationships with other people. And it's affecting other areas in our life. And we buy into this normal and we don't even realize it because normal is saying, oh, no. Normal is telling us, I'm fine. Oh, no, it's good. I'm fine. And we say that on the outside, but on the inside, there's just so much stuff. There's this story that I love about Jesus and a woman caught in adultery. And she's brought into a public place where Jesus is. And everyone, and if anyone should have felt shame, if anyone should have felt shame and embarrassment and guilt, it should have been this woman. And the laws of Jesus' time said, you know what? You can destroy her. You can publicly kill her. You can publicly destroy her, humiliate her, and all of the people. And the law said you would be just. You would be fine. And Jesus bends down on the ground. And He looked at the ground and He said, okay, it's fine. That's what the law says. But if you're perfect, go ahead and start chucking a rock. If you're perfect, go ahead and start throwing. And then after a while, He looks up into the woman's eyes and He says, woman, where are they? No one condemned you? No one threw a rock at you? And she said, no, sir. No, sir. Not one rock. And Jesus says, then neither do I condemn you. Neither do I condemn you. Now go, leave your life a sin. And see, if there was anyone who should have been told to carry around her guilt, if there was anyone that should have been told to carry around her pain and her shame of what she did, it should have been this woman. And that would have been normal. But Jesus, in this weird trade, Jesus, in this weird exchange with this woman and these words and what He did, says just the opposite. He looks her in the eyes and says, you don't have to carry all that stuff around with you anymore. He says, learn from it. Change from it. Trade up from it. Jesus says, trade your pain, your shame, your brokenness for freedom. And maybe that's you that's here today carrying around hurt and pain and shame and disillusionment. Jesus would say, trade it. Trade it up through His mercy and His grace for freedom. Last but not least, the fourth weird trade God calls us to make is He calls us to trade our glory for His glory. Whose glory are we living for? Is it for our glory or for God's glory? There have been, over the past year, and some of you know the details, that I've been through a really tough season in my life. Not in the church life, not in my spiritual life, but just in my personal life. And besides my wife being my best friend, in a period of 10 days, I lost my two best friends in the world to tragic, unexplained deaths. And coming out of it a year later, when things are beginning to just, the clouds are beginning to break just a little bit, someone asked me, someone not even close to me asked me, well, what do you think's going on here? When you lost those people in life, what do you think's going on? What do you make of all this? I mean, what's going on? And this person I know was looking for a real deep answer of faith, but then I didn't have an answer for him at the time. I was just like, I don't know. It's just like bad luck, bad karma. I don't know. But looking back on it a year later, I know this. And I know this is true, that there is a God for us. And if it's true that there is a God who loves us and who loves me, if there is a God who wants the best for me, if there is a God that has amazing destinations for me, if there is a God up there that has an amazing plan for me in my life and to do something awesome with my life, then I can never forget. I can never forget, if that's true, I can never forget that it is equally true that there's an enemy out there for my soul who wants to kill me, who wants to steal me, who wants to destroy me, and destroy my love and faith I have in God. Because we don't live in a spiritual, neutral world. We just don't. And please know that I'm not that there's a devil hiding under every rock kind of guy. I'm not the be healed, you've got demons in you kind of guy. I'm not the kooky or spooky kind of guy. But I do believe that we don't live in a spiritually negative world. That there are forces out there that some are trying to distract us and to give us off point. And so when this is going on, my mind went back to summer camp. Lakeside Chapel, Bethany Hills, Kingston Springs, Tennessee. And my mind just kept going back to that first time when I sat there as a kid, just trying to figure out who I wanted to be in life and what I wanted to be, and did I want to be the good kid or the bad kid that was always in trouble, and what direction I wanted my life to go, and all this pressure of choosing a college and all this. I remember sitting there looking up at the stars and hearing God's voice. And it was God's voice saying, calling me into ministry. And it was like saying, Tommy, I need you to do something. And I spent years, I left that place, and I left that Lakeside Chapel. I would return, but I spent years and years and almost decades trying to quiet that voice. And then what came to me is 2 Timothy 2:10. And I'll admit that at the time when I was 16 years old, sitting there and God gave me that voice, I didn't even know there was a 2 Timothy or a 1 Timothy. I didn't even know what Timothy was. It's a book in the Bible, New Testament, if you don't know. And it says, therefore I endured everything for the sake of the chosen, that they too may obtain the salvation that is in Jesus Christ, with eternal glory. That's what it said. And I didn't even know what it was. And here I am as God was calling me, and he was saying, Tommy, I'm calling you to endure it. I'm calling you to endure the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm calling you to speak to your generation. To those people that are like you. He said, Tommy, I'm calling you to speak to a generation that has bought into this life of normal. You are to speak. You are to speak. You spent your whole life getting in trouble at school because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. And now I'm going to have you open your mouth and speak to your generation. But not for your glory, but for my glory. For the glory that lasts forever. For eternal glory. For this life and the next. And I said, okay, I'll endure it. I'll endure it all so at the end of my life, I didn't live for my glory, but for the glory of Jesus. I endured it all, the good, the bad, the ugly. And enduring everything that comes your way. I'm not saying my story is miraculous or anything. That's just my story, but everyone has a story. And everyone has a struggle. And what I'm saying is endure anything that comes your way. Endure it for the glory of God. See, it doesn't matter if we're facing a battle of cancer. It doesn't matter if we're facing the death of the loved one. It doesn't matter if we're facing depression. It doesn't matter if we're facing difficulties in our relationship. Whatever comes your way, we serve a God that is with you. We serve a God who walks every step of the way with you. We love and serve a God that the good, the bad, and the ugly, and at the end, we will overcome. We will overcome in Him, in our Lord Jesus. We will overcome by the blood of the Lamb. We overcome not from our own strength and the power, but from His power. I will stand and endure anything, not for my glory that comes my way, but for the glory of God. We will overcome. We will overcome. Say that with me, no matter what's in your life. We will overcome. Now say it again like you mean it. We will overcome. And no matter what you're facing today, you will overcome. We will be weird. Will you pray with me?